You know, we go, kids. All right, good morning, everybody. It is frosty and cold this morning. We actually have snow coming, 3 to 5 inches on Wednesday. Today's Monday. It was Super Bowl Sunday yesterday. And we have, hi mama. We have snow coming. We've been going through just our normal swings, temperature swings. I'm watching 322 there. She's kind of, let's see if I can zoom in here. She's kind of breathing a little heavy. I'm gonna use you as a table for a second, mama. Put my other glove on. Okay. As you can see, she's not necessarily stuffing her face, so I don't know. It's such a pain to get the vet out here to do some diagnostic type tests, and I just don't want to be throwing antibiotics and medications into these kids if they don't really need it. But I am a little worried because both her and her sister have kind of had these symptoms, and both her and her sister have had spontaneous abortions, unfortunately. So 3222 right here. She's a heifer from 2022. She was bred successfully, and all of a sudden she started coming open. As you'll see, her sister 3121 very much had a abortion. And she gave birth to a fetus that was not viable. It was not alive, but it was fairly well developed, unfortunately. Basically, when I came home from shift, I was filling water like I normally do, and I heard a lot of mooing. So I walked down here, and right away I saw the afterbirth hanging out of her. And I thought, my first thought was totally just hoping that someone had gotten into her sooner than my breeder, and she had actually just given birth to a fully developed, healthy calf who was laying, you know, in the warm shed somewhere. And I was gonna have to figure out who the hell the dad was. But very quickly I realized that she was stressed. She was walking around looking. This was just going into the 3rd trimester. She's 3 months shy at least before giving birth. I knew that it was an abortion, unfortunately. I kind of followed her and I started looking around, and right away I found the calf. I did take some after footage when I had removed the calf and brought it up closer to the house, because she was traumatized. She was stressed. She was licking this thing. She was trying to get it to respond. I'm not sure when. It was still warm and pliable, so I'm assuming she had just given birth not too long before I got home that morning. But I'll roll that footage now, but I will just tell you that, you know, it's a dead fetus. And so if you don't want to see it, pause the video, fast forward, whatever you want to do if you want to avoid it. It's not graphic, you know, the thing was, again, very developed, but yeah, so here we go. Well, damn. That's not good. Came home from work this morning and heard one of the cows hollering pretty good. Went down just to check feed and see how they were doing, and noticed that she had afterbirth coming out of her, hanging out of her. She went racing back across the pasture and stood in a certain spot, and then I was like, oh, no, that's not good, and kind of walked around a little bit and then found this little guy. It was a little bull calf. Yeah, bummer, man. Just getting ready to get into that 3rd trimester. It's pretty late for an abortion. So I'm gonna have to do some research, figure out, talk to the vet, talk to some neighbors, figure out what exactly happened or could have happened. You know, I've had great luck calving ever since I brought cows home, never had any calving problems, never lost any calves. Breeding was, you know, hit and miss, but that's to be expected with AI. Some years I was 100% successful. Some years I was 33% successful. But this is a first for me. And, you know, having that other heifer become open, I might have something going on here either. So right away I called my vet and I asked him if there was anything that I should do with that fetus. I wanted to make sure that there was nothing that I could use that fetus for diagnostics. And luckily he got back to me right away and said, yes, if you want, we can take it to Iowa State University. You can get as much of an afterbirth sample as you can gather from her, and then we can submit it to their diagnostic labs. And he was straight up with me. He said, it's gonna cost you money, it's gonna be a good chunk of change, and there is a very high likelihood that you are not gonna get any answers. It's really, really hard to tell definitively what went on to cause that abortion. Now, real quick, let's talk about that afterbirth and passing the placenta. A lot of times when a cow has a full-term calf, the nursing, the suckling of the calf stimulates that mama to pass her afterbirth. So it might not happen right away, but within a few hours, she normally passes the placenta. In an abortion situation like this, where there was no normal birth, where there was no nursing afterwards, they can retain that placenta for a long time. And the research that I had done was saying that the old school way of thinking was you needed to get that placenta out of there. You have essentially a highway up into the reproductive tract that any sort of outside pathogen can now take from that material hanging down, touching the ground. If she lays down in a muddy lot or on manure or anything like that, it can travel up that placenta that's hanging out and get into her reproductive tract and cause a infection. And while that is true, the old school way of thinking used to be you needed to remove that placenta if she wasn't gonna pass it herself. That is not, side note, so this maybe is why she's breathing so heavy. Now that I think about it, this morning when I woke up, I was watching two girls fight and I wasn't sure who it was, and they had been at it all morning. So I'm assuming 3222 and her sister 3121 are fighting for herd pecking order, herd hierarchy, and that's why she seems to be a little run down. So that makes me feel a little bit better. Okay, back to the placenta. You are physically removing that from the uterine wall and ripping it off, and you are doing that at the detriment of future reproduction. You could cause irreversible damage to the uterine wall by pulling that. So the new way of thinking is to no longer do that. Mama, you just want attention, don't you? What I was reading was saying, let them pass it on its own. Watch the animal for signs of infection, you know, drooping their head, heavy breathing, hanging their ears, being off feed, not eating, not drinking, separating themselves, stuff like that. Classic signs that an animal is sick. And if that's the case, then treat for infection. And if you want to pen them up at that point and see if you can apply gentle traction to whatever afterbirth is exposed to try and pull it out. You can reach your gloved hand in there a little bit, just pull some gentle traction. But if it's not coming out, don't force it. She, other than being stressed, you know, she was still eating, she was still drinking, and this went on for a week. She still had it hanging out, but I could see a little bit more of it exposed. I was kind of using how far down it was hanging from her tail. I was using her tail as a gauge, and this is 3121 in front of me right now. So basically that long string was, after I had ripped it off, was just a quarter of the way down her tail. Then a couple days later, it was halfway down her tail. And then a week later, it was reaching the end of her tail. So I knew that she was working to expel it. She was eating, she was drinking, she was acting normal. I was not concerned. Everything was all good. I would call that 8 or 9 days it took for her to expel that placenta on her own. And I had looked around. I don't see it. I didn't find it. She very well could have eaten it. So back to Iowa State. I honestly have not heard anything yet, but I did reach out to my vet close to a week after I had dropped off those samples and asked him if he had received anything. He had said that a handful of the tests were completed. They were inconclusive, no answers, but there were still some tests pending. Probably the biggest thing that I'm thinking right now that I'm a little concerned about is lepto. Brucellosis can do the same thing, but I think a lot of us know that brucellosis is damn near eradicated in the United States, and there's only a handful of states overall in the western half of the country that kind of worry about brucellosis. Plus, if they had detected brucellosis in any of the samples that I had dropped off, I'm sure I would have had a damn helicopter response team land out here in my pastures and confine my animals and probably terminate them, because the last thing we want is for brucellosis to start back up in the state. So these girls aren't vaccinated, and that is something that I have struggled with over the years, trying to decide if I want to do the full panel of vaccines, if I want to do even just a few vaccines. But they're not exposed to other cattle other than a few of them random times throughout the year when they go to the breeder or when they go to the vet. But I don't have neighboring cattle around me. They are close, but they are not fence line close. Now, some of you might remember on one of my leased pastures last year, the neighbor's herd and my herd did meet on the corner. So that is one thing I thought about, that that could be something to where they are picking up illnesses from cattle at those very few times a year, and because they're not vaccinated, that is causing them problems. So lepto just kind of seemed like the most possible reason for me. Now, if I had just had one of these heifers abort, I would say it could have been anything, you know, but the high likelihood that it could have been possibly a traumatic abortion. Hang on, kiddo, let me pick this up. Don't kick me. It could have been a traumatic abortion, you know, and by that I mean she could have gotten kicked, she could have gotten headbutted, she could have gotten slammed into the hay ring, a tree, anything like that. And because she was a new mom, because she was a heifer, she just could have, I mean, any animal at any stage can lose a calf due to traumatic abortion, but there's a higher likelihood when you're a new mom. However, because now I had a second one come up, man, they are just hating each other this morning. Because I had a second heifer come up, I started thinking that maybe there was something being passed along in my herd. And lepto can cause abortions. Don't let her push you around. Goodness. Lepto can be passed in wildlife urine and feces, urinating on things that they're eating or drinking. And my first thought was that this fence line right here, there is a small ditch that holds on to water. It does not drain very well. And because cows are cows and they're lazy and they want convenience, instead of walking all the way up to the barn to get water, sometimes when this thaws out, like we have had a lot of thawing this year, a lot of mild temperatures, they will drink out of that. And so I started thinking that it is entirely possible that they picked up lepto from stagnant water that they were drinking. Man, they are fighting. Then I was reading that lepto actually can be passed in mouse feces and mouse urine. And dude, we have had a horrible problem with mice in the barn this year. I do not know what it is. We've had more, mice were literally falling out of the hayloft. I'd be in there working and mice they'd be so just crazy up in the hayloft that they would like push each other off. They'd fall off the hay. They'd be landing on the barn floor. I found more dead mice outside the barn and inside the barn than I could count. So we had a major mice problem this year in the barn, and I have fed more small square bales this year earlier than I ever have. So I started thinking all of those mice, some of them might have had lepto. That could be a reason why so many of those mice were just dead outside the barn and in the barn. And they were building homes in the hay. They very well could have picked up lepto from mouse droppings. I just feel like mice are so prevalent in anyone's farming operation, and small square bales are prevalent, that I just feel like it would have been more of a problem. Why this year, I don't know. Oh, it's getting cold. All right. I need to get a bedding bale out. I have only gone through one of those ryegrass bales, so I definitely overbought. I'm gonna have to figure out how to store those bales for next year. So I gotta go get a bedding bale, kind of flake some of that out for this incoming weather. We do have single-digit temperatures coming. Again, like I said, we have snow. It's gonna be frozen for a few weeks, which will be nice for the ground and will be nice for the animals to finally have a consistent temperature. Questions, comments, concerns, sarcastic remarks, you know the drill. Leave them down below. Find the ranch on Instagram It's at WR_ranch. There'll be a link in the bio. And then the website is up and running, WRockingR.com. That link will also be in the description. So thanks for watching. I love seeing new subscribers come on, and I love conversing with you guys and answering any questions you have. So we'll talk to you later. Man, they're just going at it. Also, it's days like this that I remember when we almost talked ourselves into not getting a cab tractor. We don't need a tractor with a cab, it's no big deal. It's nice to get in this thing nice and warm and finish up chores.